Right, Rob, staying with you, let's move to the Rugby Championship, starting on Saturday morning with a near upset in Dunedin. But I mean, how many times have we seen that happen in recent years, with a team almost beating the All Blacks, and the All Blacks always predictably seem to come through in the end. But will certainly make for an interesting challenge for the Springboks when they face Australia. But moving to Salta in the evening, not a pretty game. A lot of bad discipline, particularly from the Argentinians. Yeah. But a great result for the Springboks, given their results in Argentina in recent years.
Yeah, it was. I mean, a lot of people were fearful before the game, thinking, Argentina had come over here and been clobbered, and that does make that sort of wounded animal a little bit of a, a dangerous factor back there, especially when you have to go and play them at a sort of backwater venue. The crowd seemed to almost be particularly hostile, despite the conditions. That stadium is a slightly strange venue for rugby union, and it just adds up to a general sense of unease. But I've got to say that the Springboks coped, I thought, admirably. It was at altitude as well, let's not forget that. And of course, certain Springboks obviously well acquainted with playing at altitude, so not a special factor, but just something different, and it would have made a few Springbok fans perhaps that little bit extra nervous. And the Argentinians were certainly, I think they were up for it. Unfortunately, they're not as good a team as they used to be. I think Garen and I were chatting just ahead of the show that they're definitely down on the Pumas teams from a quality point of view, in terms of depth and just those individual bits of genius that don't seem to be happening in the Argentinian ranks at the moment. And they were quite cynical, as we I think had to expect. But I thought the Boks generally absorbed it pretty well. I thought their discipline held magnificently. It showed great maturity that the Boks were able to come through that game and turn it on so well at times that they were able to sort of run away with things, as they have in every test match they've played so far this season. I think I'd say 2/3 of the South African rugby public are pretty happy at the moment. There's another third who are saying, well, we haven't yet had the major test. We haven't yet had, Australia, New Zealand, especially in a double round of away games, which is obviously on the immediate horizon. But I think there's much to celebrate at this very point. Beating France 3-0, beating Argentina effectively 2-0, 5 out of 5, convincing win each time. It tells you that the Boks are on the up and up. And the collective spirit is not to be underestimated. I thought the spirit was a big reason why they were able to overcome that Argentinian hurdle, why they were able to keep their cool, work for each other. The defensive hunger, I thought, was pretty decent. A few rough edges to the Boks, but lots that's going right at the moment. And so, we shouldn't be averse to celebrating sort of the here and now, if you like.
So, Garen, the Boks, of course, have got a 2-week break now until they play the Wallabies in Perth. Then followed by the All Blacks in Albany, I believe it is.
That's correct.
What areas still give you concern in terms of, I guess, team selection, combinations? It almost seems that sort of for every good player the Boks have in the starting lineup, the All Blacks have got 2 or 3.
Absolutely. They do tend to have better depth, and they're giving sabbaticals to players like Ben Smith. They're missing a couple of players through injury, yet those that come in don't seem to weaken the team at all. There are a few Springbok players that if they are injured or missing, they create a bit of a concern. Certainly the backup is not nearly as good as the All Black backup. But from a South African point of view, I think the back three is a little bit of a concern, all very, very new still, even though they're obviously accumulating tests 3 by 3 by 3 as they go. But they do play a bit helter skelter, come off their line, come infield. The fullback goes missing a few times, drops a couple of up and unders. So I think that certainly is a bit of a concern, and something obviously New Zealand and Australia in 2 weeks' time, as you say, will have picked up on. And certainly I expect far more up and unders. I don't think Argentina know what an up and under is, to be quite honest. I don't think their fly have ever kicked one in both the tests. So that's something they'll certainly be tested. Raymond Rule, we saw in the Super Rugby, was a bit of a revolving door. They didn't really run at him. He tends to miss a lot of tackles. Jesse Creel, in the centre with Jan Serfontein, certainly better from a Bulls point of view. They know each other quite well, but Jesse Creel also hasn't played a lot of rugby at centre. He's been on the wing at fullback all over the show. Elton Jantjies, I thought, played really well. His kicking wasn't too bad, even though he started off a bit shaky. Problem a little bit scrum off with Ross Cornier out injured. He's got 2 weeks hopefully to be fit. Francois Hougaard, I thought he was one of the weak links in the back line, certainly. But then in the pack of forwards, I thought Khaleesi was amazing. Again, he's really put his hand up, becoming a first name on the score sheet for South Africa. And we scrummed incredibly well again. I think it's a bit of a myth, this Argentina being fantastic at scrum time. They've certainly gone backwards at a rate of knots, literally and figuratively, in that aspect. And then when you look at the Wallabies, our next test, they were really punished at the scrum time again by New Zealand, who were missing an Owen Franks, missing Wyatt Crockett as well. But they got better in the second half, and I think they start with their second half front row, if you know what I mean, and they gain any sort of parity at scrum time. They're going to be much better out wide in the backline than we are. They've got some really experienced players with Genia now, Israel Folau. I thought Kurtley Beale certainly added something, and they could easily have beaten, as you said, that All Blacks team in Dunedin, which would have been a massive statement considering they haven't won the Bledisloe Cup in 14 years now. So, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they start favourites in that match against South Africa. We talked about it would only be a successful rugby championship campaign if we beat Australia home and away and Argentina home and away. So the second part has been done, but I'm not sure we're going to beat Australia in Perth, in Australia. So I think we might fall short there. We could well beat them in Bloemfontein, which again is not really a hotbed of rugby in South Africa. So it'll be interesting to see. I think that's going to gauge how we fare in this Super Rugby, this Rugby Championship. Sorry, because I think everybody's going to beat Argentina home and away. So we've just done that. I think we're at the top of the log for the moment, but we're not going to stay there until the others play them as well. So that could come down to New Zealand winning, which I expect to happen. Then who's going to come second or third between Australia and South Africa, with Argentina clear wooden spoonists.